Kaleka comes to Chandigarh after many years, back to the Government College of Art and back to the museum, and it's been a journey that has charted many courses in Delhi, in the UK, and now we have him here at the Chandigarh Lalit Kala Academy. Welcome to
Thank you very much. Very pleased to be here.
And back to Chandigarh, how does it feel? You were here at the Government College of Art many years back.
Yes, I think the first thing that came to my mind was as to what did Chandigarh do to my sensibility.
Yes.
And I think the major thing that happened was the architecture had its influence, but in a very strange way. It's not that I was composing images which consisted of this kind of architecture, but I think a sense of modernity compared to other places. I think that was inspiring. That because we saw different configurations of the city, how it was laid out, and also how the structures were built, and the innovations, Corbusier's architecture. So that, I think, played a major role in inspiring one to also explore different means and another sensibility. So I think it was kind of stepping into a modernity. And then at the same time there were museums here where one could step back a few thousand years or a few hundred years. I think this is the first thing that came to my mind as I drove into the city, that yes, it has contributed. From Patiala.
From Patiala, which also had a rich cultural heritage also.
Yes, but not that of modernity.
Not of modernity. So that contrast of sensibilities,
Yes.
And painting, of course, was your major here at the College of Art.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And so how did it all unfold from the College of Art to UK, and then what is your who are you as an artist?
Yes. Well, here it was, the primary focus was on painting, and painting on canvas, although one made various drawings and so on. I've always done a great lot of preparation before working on a painting. So which also meant I made very few paintings. I think here too, in my final year, I think I had just 2 paintings. I would take over a year to finish a painting. But same was when I went to college in London. There too, in all those years, I did just 4 paintings. So that rhythm has been there of the slowness. I think that somehow reminds me of something else. That why the slowness? I think the slowness had also to do with the notion of time, and I think that slowness came from my experience as a child, growing up in this house, which was a haveli in the village, and for the first 5 years. I hardly ever stepped out of that house, and there were only 2 children there and a very small family, so which meant there was a lot of time spent by myself. But that was a time of immense richness in the sense because there was so little happening all around. Every tiny little thing took a huge significance. So things moved slowly, but they contained a lot. Each moment contained a lot. So somehow that fed into how I worked as well, focusing on one thing intensely, trying to enrich that moment or that event or that square millimeter, and but working very slowly, gradually towards, as if one was unrolling a carpet towards finishing the work.
So when you say you take a lot of time to prepare for a work, this is what you mean?
That means preparatory drawings, images. I would take photographs as well, which I've always done, and then drawings,
Okay.
and then finally beginning to work on the canvas. But I've done it in a different way.
Okay.
When an idea comes to me, it stays in the head, or an event, I would call it an event, comes to my head which I want to work on. It slowly begins to, from the haze, emerge.
Okay.
And it begins to interest me, the event. Now, I call it the event, I don't know what else to call it. Now, why would it interest me is because it would have some meaning.
True.
As it becomes clearer to me as to what it is, then it holds me. So I have to see for how long it interests me. If it stops interesting me after, say, a week or so, I don't go ahead with it. But if it continues to interest me beyond that, then I begin to make preparatory sketches and drawings and collect other material, take some photographs and so on.
Mm.
But one thing in that is very important. Its absolute meaning has to stay slightly out of my grasp.
Okay.
If I totally understand it, I don't work on it, because then it's of no use to me. It no longer is an exploration towards something. But I think that's also true of all, not that I'm doing great art, but it's true of great art, or the kind of art that interests me very much. It contains a fecundity and an immensity which I can't fully grasp. It does not, which means it does not deplete itself. And I think that's one reason one goes again and again to a painting or to a work of art, because there's always more there. And that also adds to, I think, a slowness in how I work.
And when you say an event, or when you say a subject or a theme,
Yes.
where do these come from? Only from inside, or is it the world around you?
Yes, I think they
Both.
at a certain age, they're initially it would come just from your own life, but eventually, as one grows up, then because I've always been painting and drawing since I was a little child, and my parents encouraged me. So all those things, those works from those times, came from whatever was around me. But what is around you is not only the experience of what's of events happening around you or in the family, but also what you're looking at. And by looking at, one means there's also art history.
Okay.
So there's also cinema, there's also literature. So one doesn't always know how they feed you, but certainly they feed your sensibility, fine tuning.
Fine tuning, okay. And what have been your greatest influences as far as your work is concerned? The external or extraneous influences that you seem to find again and again in your work. Time, you said, was one.
Yes.
Space, maybe, because you like to work at a certain rhythm. So how does it work for someone like you who likes to contemplate while drawing, painting, and you don't want to reach any end? So
well, there is an end of a kind. I know that beyond this,
it's complete.
It has reached a point of saturation from me, where I will only deplete it if I work more on it. I cannot enrich it further.
Okay.
But yes, when we talk about the element of time, what it finally took me to was to combine painting and the moving image, video, because there is time in painting as well. Time sits in a certain way in a painting, and then there is cinematic time. So it interested me how I could combine two kinds of time, the time in a painting and the cinematic time.
Okay.
So this is what I have been developing over the years.
Okay.
But in that exploration, one discovers much more. It is the physicality of painting. It's tactile sense. It's skin. It sits as a body besides you. That's why a reproduction is never as good as the original. Because it has its own thingness to it. It's, as I said, body and skin. And the image made of light has kind of an aura of a presence, but you can't hold it, you can't grasp it. So these two different elements,
light?
That's also light, yes, cinematic light, video light.
Okay.
So it's usually video, I would say more video than cinema, but my inspiration, certainly, I think my sensibility does derive more from history of cinema rather than history of video art.
Okay.
So projecting videos onto paintings is to also deal with these two materialities, one of light, the other of a tactile surface.
Okay. And if you could talk a few works that you have done combining the two, and from your different series, and how difficult is the process, because one is so technical, and the other is quite surreal actually. So
I think the question of difficulty can be talked about in this manner. One speaks of various styles in painting.
Right.
But a style, or say whether it's Impressionism or various schools of painting, or Expressionism, gestural painting, or another kind of painting.
Okay.
One is not more difficult than the other. In fact, it cannot be difficult because an artist begins to paint only when an artist arrives at ease with that very method.
Okay.
And same was the case with when I was using the moving image made of light, and then the painting. It was all I began to work on, because it was for years in my head before I began to actually make the first work. But by that time, I totally understood what I wanted to do.
Okay.
And once it's visually clear what you want to do, then technically it's not difficult.
You're right.
It's just, I never got it wrong, and I think nobody else would either if it's that clear in their head what they want to do.
Right.
Yes.
So as a painter, you see both the things together. You have understood it. How do you expect your audience to see it? Do you have some preconceived?
What interests me most in this, that it reaches a point where it's not random projection. What I enjoy most is when there is exact superimposition of the videoed image with the painted image. Like if this is a painted image, this is a videoed image, exact superimposition.
Okay.
But then I like to break that as well. So I bring them together so I can break them. But so I can deconstruct what I've made. But when they are together, so there is a point where it's not a painting and it's not a cinematic or a video image. And it becomes a third thing.
Okay.
And when you have a third thing, then there's a possibility to reach those spaces within us of experience which cannot be reached by them alone. It doesn't make this better than pure painting or pure cinema. It just becomes a third tool to express something different, to explore those experiences which I would be unable to do, explore if I was to use just one medium.
I got it.
But these mediums on their own interest me very much. Continue to. I still love pure painting. I still love pure cinema or pure video.
So what are your influences in cinema? Which form way into your work?
Yes.
Any directors or any films or any periods?
Yes, I think not anyone.
Not anyone.
But one would say there has been German expressionists, early cinema. Then there has been there's Japanese cinema.
Yes.
And then there's been Italian realists. Then there's French cinema. Then there have been Russian masters. Then of course India's masters as well.
So
very much there, yes.
Okay. And what have your recent works been about? If you could share with us a few of your works which you have been...
Now, one work, one of the last works that has been close to me, does not contain any painting in it. It's a 3-channel work.
3-channel?
3-channel, which means there are 3 projections.
Okay.
But they cover about 40 feet of space.
Okay.
So there are 2 panels which sit in the front and on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And the 3rd projection is in the middle, but behind, few feet behind the front 2 projections. So they acquire a kind of a sculptural space, as it were, because it's not, you know, it's not a flat screen.
Okay.
So there's depth even in the projection, in the 3rd projection, and this work arose from a little snippet which I had seen. I was invited to show at the Kochi Biennale, so this work is not that new, but there's nothing major I have done since that. And history of Kochi is so much associated with the sea.
Yes.
And water. So I was thinking there's something I want to do with water. Then I remembered a snippet I had seen from in a video which was made by an environmentalist, a friend of mine, an activist. There's a man who says, "This is my home, and this is the street," and he names his friends and family who live down the street.
Okay.
And he says, "There's the church, there's the mosque, and here's the temple. This is the tree which fell down in the rain, and we played on it as children." But we see there's nothing there. There's sea all around him. He's in a boat. He's imagining his village which was swallowed up by the sea.
Oh.
He's in a boat. So I thought that was fascinating.
Yes.
So this was in the Sundarbans, where the sea is eroding those islands, and the islands are disappearing. So I said, can we go and see this man? Okay. He said, certainly. So we went to Sundarbans, found the man. So I said, I want to see your village. So he took me in a boat, and again, it was. It doesn't seem he was pretending, but he would say little to the left, little to the right, and then he said, "This is home." Mm. He thought this was imagined. It seems very convincing that this is home underneath. Oh, sure. Then he named again the streets, the houses, and so on. So I start with something factual, which had happened to him, and to the island. But from then on, because I was not making a documentary, I was making a work of art, and it does something different than what a documentary does. A documentary has to give us precise facts without any ambiguity, and where there are no grey spaces, but art, poetry, music lives in grey spaces, and it emerges out of uncertainties, out of ambiguous. What is ambiguousness? It's only a kind of fecundity. It's a fullness, and it's also a space for the viewer or for the reader to expand, to somehow connect what one is looking at with one's own inner life. So from there on, it was as if it was my journey into his head. So the metaphorical events which I invented around this man. This is what the work is about. At one point he sits on the seashore and recreates in mud. He sculpts the mud into where his house was, where the streets were. He makes those, and that's again, it was quite moving.
Yes.
But there too, by the time he had finished, almost soon after he'd finished, the tide had begun to rise. It wiped slowly, took his sculpture away as well into the sea.
Okay. So you shot all this and made it as part of a. How
yes,
did you do it?
This is yes. So there was a lot of editing, of course, and then there were scenes which were invented, created, because this was another space. It was like a feverish dream, from taking it from the factual space into the space of what we say art, and that's the work which I've made, which I'm
very interesting.
Quite
What is the title?
It's called House of Opaque Water.
Oh, beautiful. Okay.
Thank you.
And so is there a thin line now between different art genres, if I can call it? Has it changed in these times for you?
It has changed hugely. I think there's something quite wonderful, because there aren't those hierarchies where painting on canvas in oils was at the top. Then there was sculpture, then there was watercolor, etching. So
it doesn't work like that anymore?
No, except for auctions. But that's another world altogether. Now there is not that hierarchy, and if any artist finds, say, a camera, someone uses the camera as a tool, as one would use a brush, whether it's a still camera or whether it's a video camera. So that's changed greatly. And if you say, so it's not, nobody says this is a painter, because that painter doesn't just paint. The painter does so much else as well.
Okay. And is it tough to flow in and out, or no? It becomes a part of the...
No, well, one's sensibilities remains the same.
It does.
The concerns remain the same, but somehow the you see, the medium itself, or the theme itself, tells you what medium to use.
Oh.
You say, I can't paint this. I have to make a film of
You're
this,
right.
or I have to sculpt this one.
Okay. So it depends on what you see, and then you choose what to do.
Yes, well, that speaks to you itself. Yes. In fact, you are dictated by the mediums.
Right. Yeah. So what's moving you these days? Anything that's really high on your mind as far as work is concerned?
I think which I've done a little bit, but I want to do it further. It's been in my head for very long. It's to bring in more the sculptural aspect in my videos,
okay,
along with the painting, that I do,
okay,
to bring in more sculpture spaces, more immersive experiences. And by immersive, I mean where you are inside a work of art, as it were, physically inside, where the work is all around. You can enter it.
Okay, that's important.
But this is what I'm moving towards. It's in my head for quite some time, but it'll be like a large sculpture.
And what material do you work with when you do sculptures? What kind of?
Oh, the various materials.
That's various.
Not any one. Yes.
So how does a work of art translate? Because you do it so differently. You say there's an idea, and then you choose the medium, and then you say you take a lot of time to. So does it change somewhere along the way?
Oh, yes,
does the idea change?
Yes, I think with all artists, what happens is.
Do you get disillusioned at times? Tired? No, I don't want to do this anymore. Does it happen?
I make so few works, so that doesn't quite happen that much. But because I don't begin unless it,
unless you're sure.
Already would have died a death in my head But if it doesn't die, then only then I begin to work on it.
So is it only in the head, or do you write it down?
I do write down as well, but I need not look at those necessarily. They're written just for, you know, yes, they allow the idea just to expand a little more when you're writing. It lives more in your head once you've written down.
Okay.
And but what happens with most artists is the medium takes over. You see, I think the simplest example is always with painting. When you're painting, after a certain time, the painting needs to tell, do this to me, do this to me. This is, yes, I'm not, you know, so there's a discomfort in your body,
okay,
which is created by the discomfort in the painting. So the tension is released only when it gets just right. Yeah.
That only a painter would know.
Yes.
And how do you see the contemporary art scene around you? You said it's a good time because the boundaries are breaking and there is more transition.
Yes.
So how do you see?
I think it's wonderful to see that there is easy access to technology as well. There's only one danger in that: the ease with which you can make work. It might seem, oh, it's good. You know, there has to be this critical distance,
okay,
which I think the quick completion of a work, say with you know, with a video or with Photoshop and so on, it might seem, oh, it's, you know, it looks good,
okay,
and so it can take away this critical distance,
okay,
which is necessary. This is like a lot of, we see so much bad design around because people can use computer and they think, oh, this is looking good.
right.
So without that, you know, and it's good that somebody who's not trained as a designer has now the means to design.
Okay.
But it's absolutely necessary that you're able to step back from the speed that technology allows you.
Okay. And you have never let it interfere with your work, in
I've been
spite of using
I've been
modern.
just slow. We are all different, and it doesn't mean that somebody who works slow is better than somebody who works faster. It's only how we are all different.
Yes. Yes. And how did your education abroad influence your painting? Did it make a great impact on your painting, or no? It's still so rooted in what you're doing?
I think the difference that was made was about looking.
Okay.
I think we would going with the professor to a museum and just going to look at one painting and going to the same painting again and again, just to look at the same painting and to talk about this one painting. So how you look, how you read a work, I think that made a difference.
Which I guess would be difficult to do in a place like Chandigarh or the Arts College, because there would not be too much scope to look at art, which today's students, I feel.
Yes, we have a collection of say miniature painting, of course.
Yes.
One can look at that, but somehow it didn't quite happen that teachers took us to any one work just to talk about that work for days and nothing else. I think that was needed.
I said that gives you insight, more insight.
Oh,
into
absolutely, absolutely. It is like listening to a piece of music, and you listen to a great classical piece of music and listen to it again and again, and it just enriches you and fine-tunes your ear to listen to other great music and to understand other great music better.
Right. So literature, music, poetry, it all
absolutely
influences.
Indeed, into sensitizing us to read anything better.
Thank you, Ranbir.
My pleasure. Thanks.